Imagine waking up one morning and realizing that the retirement you carefully planned for may cost far more than you expected. You worked for decades. You saved money. You contributed to retirement accounts. You paid taxes. You made sacrifices. And you probably imagined that one day, when you finally stopped working, your savings would give you the freedom to enjoy your time without constantly worrying about money. But retirement in 2026 looks different from what many people imagined years ago. And the biggest challenge may not be one single problem. It may not be Social Security. It may not be inflation by itself. It may not even be healthcare alone. The real challenge is that several financial pressures can hit retirees at the same time. Housing costs can remain high, insurance costs can change, everyday expenses can rise, healthcare can become a larger part of the household budget, taxes can affect retirement income in ways people didn't expect, investment markets can move sharply in either direction, and perhaps most importantly, retirement savings have to last for an uncertain number of years. That last point deserves much more attention. When you are working, your paycheck gives you an opportunity to recover from financial surprises. If groceries become more expensive, you may be able to work more hours. If your expenses increase, you might look for another job. You may receive a raise. You may build another source of income. But retirement can be different. Once you leave the workforce, your ability to increase income may become much more limited. The bills don't retire when you do. Your electricity bill doesn't retire. Your property taxes don't retire. Your insurance premiums don't retire. Your grocery bill doesn't retire. And unexpected expenses certainly don't retire. That is why today's discussion is so important if you're approaching retirement, already retired, or helping a parent or family member prepare for retirement. We're going to look at the retirement problem becoming harder to ignore in 2026, why traditional retirement planning may not be enough for some households, and what practical steps can help you prepare for uncertainty. And stay with me until the end, because we're also going to talk about one mistake that can quietly damage a retirement plan for years without looking like a major mistake when it first happens. Let's start with something simple. Retirement isn't just about how much money you have. It's about how long that money needs to support you. Someone retiring at 65 could potentially need their resources for several decades. That means a retirement account balance that looks large today can look very different after years of withdrawals, taxes, inflation, healthcare costs, and unexpected expenses. Think about someone who says, "I have $500,000 saved, so I'm fine." That number sounds reassuring, but it doesn't tell the entire story. How much does that person spend every month? How much will come from Social Security? Does the person have a pension? Is there a mortgage? Is there rent? How much could healthcare cost? How much will taxes reduce their available income? What happens if the investment portfolio falls early in retirement? And what happens if the person lives another 25 or 30 years? Those questions are much more important than simply looking at the account balance. Now let's talk about everyday expenses. Inflation doesn't have to be extremely high every single year to create a significant retirement problem. Even relatively moderate increases can add up over a long period. Imagine your household spends $3,000 every month today. If the cost of the things you regularly buy gradually increases over many years, your future monthly expenses could be significantly higher. And the problem is that retirees don't necessarily have the same income flexibility as workers. Food can become more expensive. Utilities can change. Home insurance can increase. Car insurance can increase. Property taxes can change. Repairs can become more expensive, and healthcare is another major category. This doesn't mean every retiree will experience the same pressure. Some people have paid off homes, some have pensions, some have significant savings, others are still paying rent or a mortgage. Some retirees have substantial healthcare expenses, others have relatively low medical costs. That's why there is no universal retirement number that guarantees everyone a comfortable life. A retirement plan has to fit the individual. Now here's where things become more complicated. Many people think about retirement as simply withdrawing money from their savings, but withdrawing money isn't always as simple as it sounds. Imagine someone retires with a large investment portfolio. They have stocks, bonds, and retirement accounts. Everything looks fine. Then the market experiences a significant decline. The retiree still needs money. they need groceries, they need utilities, they need insurance, they need transportation, so they continue withdrawing from their investments. The problem isn't simply that the market went down. The problem is that money is being withdrawn while investments are worth less. This is one reason the early years of retirement can matter so much. A retirement strategy should consider not only long-term average investment returns, but also the possibility of poor market performance early in retirement. Nobody knows exactly when the next major market decline will happen. That's why trying to predict the perfect time to retire can be extremely difficult. Instead, retirees should think about resilience. What happens if the market performs poorly? What happens if inflation remains uncomfortable? What happens if an unexpected expense appears? The goal isn't to predict every event. The goal is to build a plan that can survive different situations. Now let's talk about taxes. Taxes are one of the most overlooked parts of retirement planning. During your working years, you probably focused on your salary and your savings. But after retirement, you need to think about where your income is coming from and how that income may be taxed. Withdrawals from traditional retirement accounts may be taxable. Certain investment income may be taxable. Some Social Security benefits can be taxable depending on your overall income and circumstances, and if you have multiple income sources, the tax picture can become more complicated. This means your retirement account balance isn't necessarily the same thing as your spending power. Suppose someone has $800,000 in a traditional retirement account. That sounds like $800,000 available to spend. But depending on the individual's circumstances, withdrawals may create taxable income. So the actual amount available for spending can be different from the headline account balance. This is why retirement planning should focus on after-tax income whenever possible. And there is another important point. Retirement doesn't automatically mean your taxes disappear. You may stop receiving a paycheck, but you can still have taxable income. You could have retirement account withdrawals, you could have investment income, you could have pension income, you could have taxable Social Security benefits. And you could have other sources of income. That's why the tax strategy you use during retirement deserves attention. A strategy that made sense when you were 50 may not make the same sense when you're 70. Rules change, your income changes, your expenses change, your priorities change. Your retirement strategy should be reviewed as your circumstances change. Now let's talk about healthcare. This may be one of the biggest financial uncertainties in retirement. Nobody knows exactly what their healthcare needs will be over the next 20 or 30 years. One person may have relatively modest medical expenses. Another person may require frequent appointments, medications, procedures, dental care, vision care, hearing services, or other health care. Even with Medicare, retirement health care can involve premiums, deductibles, co-payments, co-insurance, prescription costs, and services that may not be covered in the way someone expects. That's why saying, "I have Medicare, so healthcare is taken care of," may be an incomplete way of looking at retirement healthcare. The better question is, what could healthcare realistically cost me over time? You don't need to know the exact number. You need to recognize that healthcare is an expense category that deserves room in your retirement plan. And this is where flexibility becomes important. A retirement budget that works perfectly under ideal conditions may fail when one unexpected expense appears. So instead of asking only, "Can I afford my normal monthly bills?" also ask, "What happens if my expenses are higher than expected? What happens if the market declines? What happens if I need a major home repair? What happens if my insurance costs increase? What happens if I need additional health care? What happens if I live much longer than expected?" These aren't exciting questions, but they are some of the most important questions you can ask before retirement. Now let's talk about housing. For many Americans, housing is one of the largest retirement expenses. If you own your home outright, that's a major advantage. But a paid-off home doesn't mean housing is free. You may still have property taxes, you may have homeowners insurance, you still have utility bills, you still have maintenance. And eventually, major repairs may become necessary. A roof doesn't care whether you're retired. An air conditioning system doesn't care whether the stock market is having a good year. A plumbing problem doesn't wait for your investment portfolio to recover. That's why homeowners should think about maintenance and repair costs as part of retirement planning. Renters face a different challenge. If rent increases over time, that increase has to come out of the retirement budget. And this is why your housing decision can have a huge impact on retirement security. Sometimes people focus heavily on their investment portfolio while ignoring the largest expense in their monthly budget. Housing deserves attention too. Now let's discuss another issue: financial decisions based on fear. Retirement can make people more sensitive to market headlines. When you're working and the market falls, you may have decades to recover. When you're retired, a major decline can feel much more threatening because you're already withdrawing money. That fear can lead people to make sudden decisions. They may sell investments during a downturn, they may move everything into cash, they may abandon a long-term strategy, or they may make a major financial decision because of something they saw online. But retirement planning should not be based on the emotion of the day. You cannot control the market. You cannot predict every economic event. You cannot know exactly when inflation will rise or fall. The better goal is to build a financial structure that can operate in different environments. There will be good years. There will be bad years. There will be periods of higher inflation. There will be periods when markets perform strongly. There will be periods when markets struggle. A strong retirement plan needs to recognize that uncertainty exists. Now let's talk about longevity. Living longer is something many people hope for. But financially, a longer retirement means your money needs to last longer. If you retire at 65 and live to 95, that's potentially 3 decades of retirement. That's a very different challenge from planning for only 10 or 15 years. And this is why retirees should be careful about assuming that a certain withdrawal amount will always be safe. Your appropriate withdrawal strategy depends on many factors. Your age matters, your spending matters, your Social Security income matters, your investment strategy matters, taxes matter, healthcare matters, and your personal circumstances matter. There is no magic withdrawal number that works perfectly for everyone. Now let's talk about family support. This is another retirement issue that doesn't receive enough attention. Parents sometimes continue helping adult children financially after retirement. Maybe they're helping with rent. Maybe they're helping with education. Maybe they're paying an unexpected medical bill. Maybe they're helping with a major purchase. The intention can be wonderful, but retirement changes the financial equation. During your working years, a large financial gift may be recoverable because another paycheck is coming. During retirement, a large withdrawal could permanently reduce the amount of money available for your own future needs. That doesn't mean you should never help family. It means you need to know what you can realistically afford. Your retirement security matters too. And this leads to one of the most important concepts in retirement planning. Your retirement should have layers. You don't want your entire financial future depending on one source of money. If all your income depends on one investment account, one pension, or one financial assumption, you may have less flexibility. For some households, retirement income may come from several sources: Social Security, a pension, a 401k, an IRA, personal savings, investments, part-time work, rental income, or other assets depending on the household. The combination will be different for everyone. But multiple income sources can potentially give a retiree more flexibility. And diversification isn't only about investments. It can also mean diversification of income. Now let's discuss emergency savings. Some people enter retirement with a significant investment portfolio, but very little accessible cash. That can create a problem. Imagine your car suddenly needs an expensive repair, or your home needs an urgent repair, or you face an unexpected expense. If every dollar is invested for the long term, you may have to sell investments or take a large withdrawal. A separate emergency reserve can provide flexibility. The appropriate amount depends on your circumstances, but the principle is straightforward. Don't treat every dollar in your investment portfolio as money for normal monthly spending. Some money may need to be reserved for surprises. Now let's talk about debt. Entering retirement with debt isn't automatically a financial disaster, but high-interest debt can become much more difficult when your income is fixed or less flexible. Credit card debt can be expensive. Large monthly payments can reduce your flexibility. A mortgage can consume a substantial portion of monthly retirement income. The important question isn't simply, do I have debt? The better question is, what does this debt do to my monthly cash flow? Retirement planning is about cash flow. Someone can have a valuable home and still struggle to pay monthly bills. Someone else may have fewer assets but very manageable expenses. That's why monthly cash flow deserves as much attention as net worth. Now here's something else worth considering. Retirement doesn't always have to be all or nothing. For some people, working a few additional years can dramatically change their financial situation. Those extra years could mean additional savings. They could mean fewer retirement withdrawals. They could provide employer benefits. They could potentially allow someone to rethink when they claim Social Security. For others, full-time work may no longer be realistic or desirable. Part-time work could be an alternative. Even a modest amount of income can reduce the amount that needs to be withdrawn from investments. Of course, this isn't possible or appropriate for everyone. Health, family responsibilities, job availability, and personal goals all matter. But remember that retirement can be flexible. It doesn't have to look exactly like the retirement your parents imagined. Now let's talk about Social Security. Social Security can be a major part of retirement income for millions of Americans. But it should generally be viewed as one component of a larger retirement strategy. Your claiming decision matters. Claiming earlier can mean receiving benefits sooner, but generally at a lower monthly amount. Delaying can potentially increase the monthly benefit. There is no universal answer about which choice is best. The decision can depend on your health, household finances, other income, taxes, work plans, and personal circumstances. And if you're married, you also need to think about the household rather than looking at one person's benefit in isolation. Survivor benefits can matter too. A retirement plan should consider not only what happens while both spouses are alive. It should also ask, what happens if one spouse dies? Household income can change significantly. Some expenses may decrease, but many expenses don't simply disappear. Housing costs remain, utilities remain, taxes remain, healthcare expenses remain. That's why a survivor scenario can be an important part of retirement planning. Now, let's return to inflation. One of the biggest mistakes retirees can make is assuming that today's budget will remain exactly the same forever. If you're 65 today, your retirement could potentially last decades. Your spending needs may change, your healthcare needs may change, your housing situation may change, and the purchasing power of money can change over time. Social Security has cost of living adjustments, but your personal expenses may not rise at exactly the same rate. That means retirement planning should consider purchasing power, not just the number printed on a monthly benefit statement. Ask yourself, what will my income buy 10 years from now? That is a much more useful question than simply asking, how much money will I receive next month? Now let's discuss another important issue, Medicare and healthcare planning. Social Security and Medicare are separate programs, but they can affect your retirement budget together. Medicare premiums and other healthcare costs can affect the amount of money available for everyday spending. Certain income levels can also result in higher Medicare-related premiums. This is another reason why large taxable transactions deserve careful consideration. For example, taking a very large retirement account withdrawal may solve one short-term problem, but it can also affect your overall tax picture and potentially other income-related costs. That doesn't mean large withdrawals are always wrong. It means you should understand the consequences before making them. This is where coordinated retirement planning becomes valuable. Taxes, Social Security, Medicare, investments, and withdrawals can all interact. Looking at only one piece can give you an incomplete picture. Now let's talk about the biggest retirement mistake I mentioned earlier. It's not necessarily spending too much. It's not necessarily investing badly. It's failing to have a backup plan. Imagine a retiree whose entire plan assumes that everything will go exactly as expected. Their investments produce strong returns. Inflation stays manageable. Healthcare costs remain predictable. Their home doesn't need major repairs. They live exactly as long as expected. Their family doesn't need financial help. Their taxes don't change significantly. Everything goes perfectly. That plan may look excellent on paper, but real life?